The sun was setting behind the quiet neighborhood of Willow Creek, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The streets were mostly empty except for a few cars parked near houses and some children playing in their yards. For most people, it was a peaceful evening, but for Officer Reed, the night was about to take a sharp and unexpected turn. Officer Reed had been on patrol for hours. He was a tall man in his early 40s, wearing a crisp police uniform and carrying a heavy-duty belt filled with the tools of his job. His eyes scanned the street carefully, but there was something heavy in his heart. He had seen many things in his years as a cop, and some of those memories still bothered him. Tonight, his mind was restless, and he was not feeling as calm as usual. He was called to a report about someone trespassing near the old Parker house, a property that had been empty for months. The neighbors had complained about noises and strange footsteps. Officer Reed drove slowly down the street until he reached the house. The tall iron gate was closed but unlocked. Beyond the gate, the yard was dark and silent except for the sound of leaves rustling in the light breeze. Officer Reed stepped out of his car quietly and moved toward the gate. His flashlight cut through the darkness, searching for any sign of a person. Suddenly, a figure appeared near the side of the house. A young girl, no older than 16 or 17. She wore a loose hoodie and jeans, her head lowered, as if trying to hide. Her skin was a rich, warm brown, and her eyes looked sharp and alert. "Hey, stop right there!" Officer Reed called out firmly, raising his voice. The girl froze for a moment, then took a few steps back. "Why are you here?" he asked, keeping his voice steady but serious. The girl said nothing. Her lips were pressed tightly together, and her eyes darted nervously around. "This is private property. You're trespassing," Officer Reed said. He moved closer, his hand resting near his radio. "I need you to come with me." The girl's chest rose and fell quickly, showing she was scared. She took a step forward suddenly, and Officer Reed thought she might try to run. "Wait! Don't move!" he shouted, reaching for his taser. But the girl didn't run. Instead, she took another step and then stopped, shaking her head slightly. "Please," she said softly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Officer Reed's heart pounded. He was tense. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in the cold night air. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from behind the house. It was a dog barking fiercely. The girl flinched and turned, looking toward the noise. Officer Reed followed her gaze, but he couldn't see anything clearly in the dark. In that instant, Officer Reed made a decision. He raised his weapon quickly and shouted, "Don't move!" A shot rang out. The girl screamed and fell to the ground. Officer Reed rushed to her side, dropping his weapon and pulling out his radio. "Officer down! Shots fired! Need immediate! Medical help!" he called urgently. The girl lay still for a moment, then gasped for air, clutching her side. Blood seeped through her fingers. Officer Reed's hands trembled as he knelt beside her. "Stay with me, help is coming," he whispered. The silence of the street shattered as neighbors opened their doors and windows. The bright flashing lights of ambulances and police cars filled the street within minutes. Officer Reed stayed by the girl's side, watching her face closely. She was pale but breathing. He could see tears welling up in her eyes. Suddenly, a man ran out of a nearby house. He was tall and strong, with gray hair and a worried expression. He shouted, "Mia, what happened?" The girl's eyes fluttered open, and she whispered, "Dad." The man's face changed instantly. It was Mayor Johnson, the respected leader of the town. His daughter, his own Mia, had been shot. The crowd grew silent. People whispered among themselves, shocked by what they had just heard. How could this happen in their peaceful neighborhood? Officer Reed looked up at the mayor. His voice was heavy with regret. "Sir, I didn't know. I thought she was a trespasser." Mayor Johnson's eyes filled with tears. "My daughter is not a criminal," he said softly. "She is 16 years old. She was only walking home. Ambulance workers carefully lifted Mia onto a stretcher and rushed her to the hospital. The mayor followed closely, his face pale but determined. Officer Reed stood alone on the street, feeling the weight of what had happened. His hands still shook. He had meant to protect the neighborhood, but instead, he had hurt an innocent girl, and now he didn't know what to do. As the emergency vehicles disappeared into the night, the residents of Willow Creek gathered outside, their faces full of fear, anger, and sadness. They whispered stories about Mia, about the police, about justice. What would happen next? Would Officer Reed be punished? Would Mia survive? Would the town heal or fall apart? In the darkness, one thing was clear. The peaceful evening had changed forever. The hospital waiting room was cold and silent except for the low hum of machines and soft footsteps. Mayor Johnson sat stiffly on a metal chair, his hands clenched tightly together. His eyes were fixed on the door to the emergency room, where doctors and nurses moved in and out like shadows. Each time the door opened, his heart jumped, hoping for good news. Mia's mother, Mrs. Johnson, sat beside him, her face pale and drawn. She held a small handkerchief to her mouth, trying to keep calm, but tears fell quietly down her cheeks. Their family, once whole and happy, now felt broken and fragile. Outside the hospital, the news had spread quickly. Reporters gathered near the entrance, cameras flashing, microphones ready to catch any statement. The town was buzzing with shock and anger. How could this happen? How could a police officer shoot the mayor's own daughter? At the police station, Officer Reed sat in a quiet room, his uniform unbuttoned and tie loosened. He stared at the blank wall, replaying the night's events over and over in his mind. Every moment, every sound, every decision, it all felt heavier now. He had been placed on immediate leave, pending investigation. Detective Simmons entered the room quietly and sat across from Reed. "We need your statement," she said calmly. "What happened out there?" Reed swallowed hard. "I saw her near the Parker house. She didn't stop when I told her to. I was scared. I thought she might be dangerous. The dog barking scared me more. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Simmons nodded and took notes. "We'll review the footage and talk to witnesses. For now, stay available." Reed nodded but felt empty inside. He wasn't sure if he had done the right or wrong thing, only that the pain was real and deep. In the town square, the mood was tense. People gathered in small groups, whispering and debating. Some stood with arms crossed, defending Officer Reed, saying he had a hard job and made a split-second choice. Others shouted for justice, demanding answers and changes to how police treated black residents. A community meeting was scheduled for the next evening. The mayor, despite his personal grief, prepared to speak to his town. He wanted to bring calm, but also to demand truth. That night, in the Johnson family home, the phones kept ringing. Calls from reporters, city officials, friends, and neighbors flooded in. Mayor Johnson answered as many as he could, trying to hold himself together for his family and his town. Mia's room upstairs was empty, silent. The bed was neatly made, a few books lay on the nightstand. Her small framed photo sat on the dresser, a smiling girl with bright eyes full of hope and life. Mrs. Johnson quietly walked in, touching the photo gently. "Please be okay, Mia," she whispered, tears falling again. The next day, the hospital released a brief statement. Mia was stable, but still in serious condition. She was unconscious but breathing on her own. Doctors were hopeful, but there was no clear timeline for recovery. The news spread quickly, and social media exploded with support for Mia. People posted messages of hope, prayers, and calls for justice. The hashtag #SheJusticeForMia trended within hours. Mayor Johnson stood before the cameras at a press conference later that afternoon. His voice was calm but firm. "My daughter was an innocent girl walking home from a friend's house. She did nothing wrong. What happened last night is unacceptable. Our community deserves answers and justice. Reporters shouted questions, but the mayor held his ground. We will cooperate fully with the investigation. I will not allow this tragedy to be forgotten or ignored. Meanwhile, at the police station, Officer Reed faced his own battles. Police chief called a meeting with the department. Officers gathered, some uneasy, others defensive. We must work together through this, the chief said, but we will also be transparent. This is a difficult time for our town and for our department. Some officers expressed frustration. He was just doing his job, one said. We face danger every day. Others were quiet, reflecting on the impact of the shooting and what it meant for their relationship with the community. Back in the A neighborhood, the Johnson family's house was surrounded by media vans and curious neighbors. Many people brought flowers and candles, hoping to show support. Mia's friends gathered in small groups, sharing stories of her kindness and laughter. One of Mia's closest friends, Jasmine, stood in the crowd, tears streaming down her face. She didn't deserve this. No one does, she said softly. The incident had awakened deep feelings in the town. People who had never thought about race or policing before now found themselves asking hard questions. How often did such mistakes happen? How many lives were affected by fear and misunderstanding? At the community center, activists began organizing. They planned peaceful protests and forums to discuss racism and police reform. Flyers were posted around town calling for change and justice. Mia's shooting had become a spark, lighting a fire of conversation and action. Yet despite the growing movement, fear lingered. Some parents worried for their children. Some officers feared losing respect and trust. The town was at a crossroads, unsure which path to take. That evening, Mayor Johnson returned home late, exhausted but determined. He sat at the kitchen table with his wife, sharing a quiet moment. We have to be strong, he said, for Mia, for all of us. Mrs. Johnson nodded, wiping away tears. But it hurts so much. Yes, he replied, but pain can lead to change if we face it together. As the night deepened, the town held its breath. Everyone waited for the next chapter, what justice would look like, how healing could begin, and whether the community could find hope after tragedy. Officer Reed sat alone in his small apartment, the silence pressing down on him. The walls were bare except for a few faded photos, his family, a graduation picture from the police academy, and a newspaper clipping of a community award he had once received. He stared at the photos but could not focus. His mind was filled with memories, doubts, and a heavy feeling of guilt. For years, Reed had dreamed of being a good police officer. He wanted to protect his town, to keep families safe from harm. When he was a young man, he had worked hard to earn his badge. He remembered the pride he felt on graduation day and the promises he made to himself and his community. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Reed grew up in a small town not far from Willow Creek. His childhood was not easy. His father had left when Reed was young, and his mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Reed learned early how hard life could be. He also saw the way people around him talked about others, sometimes with fear, sometimes with anger, especially toward people who looked different. When he joined the police force, Reed believed he was making a difference. But the job was harder than he imagined. He saw crime and violence, but he also saw fear and mistrust between police and the people they served. He tried to be fair, but sometimes he caught himself thinking in ways he didn't like. Old fears and judgments surfaced without warning. That night, when Reed saw Mia near the Parker house, all those feelings rushed back. He was tired, on edge, and afraid. The barking dog startled him. He thought the situation was dangerous. He acted quickly, and the consequences were terrible. Reed's phone buzzed. It was a message from his sister, Lisa. "Are you okay? I saw the news." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for his coat and left the apartment. He needed fresh air. Outside, the night was cool and calm. The stars shone brightly, but Reed felt trapped in darkness. He walked to a small park nearby, sitting on a bench, under an old oak tree. He thought about Mia, the girl he had shot. He didn't know her, but he knew the pain his actions had caused. He pictured her family, the mayor and his wife, waiting in the hospital, holding on to hope. He remembered the look in Mia's eyes when she fell to the ground, the fear, the surprise, the pain. That image haunted him. Reed wished he could turn, back time. He wished he had stopped and talked instead of reacting in fear. But he couldn't change what happened. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You okay?" Reed looked up to see an older man sitting on the next bench. The man wore simple clothes and had kind eyes. "Just thinking," Reed said quietly. The man nodded. "Sometimes when things go wrong, it helps to remember where you come from and where you want to go." Reed looked at him, surprised by the gentle tone. "My name's Mr. Carter," the man said. "I work at the community center." Reed hesitated, but then nodded. "I'm Reed," Mr. Carter smiled. "You don't have to carry the burden alone, Reed. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." Reed felt a small spark of hope. The next day, Reed met with Mr. Carter and some community leaders. They talked about fear, bias, and trust. Reed listened carefully. He learned about the experiences of people he had never understood before, their pain, their hopes, their dreams. It was hard to hear. But it was necessary. At the same time, the investigation into the shooting continued. Reed gave more statements, answering questions honestly. He admitted his fears, but also expressed deep regret. He wanted to be part of the healing, not the harm. Meanwhile, Mayor Johnson prepared to address the town again. He knew this tragedy was bigger than his family. It was about justice and change for all. At the town hall meeting, hundreds of people gathered. Some were angry, some sad, some hopeful. The mayor stood at the podium, his voice steady. "This is a time for truth. Mia's pain is our pain. We must face hard truths about race, fear, and policing. But we can also find a way forward. Together, the crowd listened. Some shouted questions. Others wiped away tears. Afterward, some citizens approached Officer Reed. They were cautious but willing to talk. Reed spoke honestly about his mistakes and his desire to learn and change. It was the beginning of a difficult journey, for Reed, for Mia's family, and for the entire town. Reed realized that being a good officer was not just about enforcing rules. It was about understanding, compassion, and courage to face one's own faults. That night, Reed sat again in his apartment. He opened the newspaper and read about the protests, the community meetings, and Mia's condition. He prayed silently, not just for forgiveness, but for strength to become better. He knew this was only the start. The morning sun rose over Willow Creek, but the town was far from peaceful. News of the shooting had spread everywhere. People talked about it in shops, schools, and churches. Everyone had an opinion. Many were angry and hurt. Some demanded justice. Others wanted to understand what had gone wrong. At the community center, a group of activists had gathered. They were young and old, black and white, all united by one goal, to bring change. Among them was Jasmine, Mia's closest friend. She stood at the front holding a sign that read, "Justice for Mia." Her voice was steady but filled with pain as she shared her thoughts. "We can't let this happen again," Jasmine said. "We need to come together, speak out, and make sure our voices are heard. This is about more than Mia. It's about every child, every family that feels afraid." The crowd nodded and cheered quietly, the energy in the room growing stronger. Outside, Officer Reed watched the news coverage on his phone. The protests, the speeches, the calls for reform. It was all happening fast. He felt a mix of fear and hope. Fear of what the future held for him and hope that the town could heal. Meanwhile, Mayor Johnson was busy preparing for a public meeting. He wanted to bring the community together. He knew this was a chance to listen, to heal, and to lead. On the evening of the meeting, the town hall was packed. People filled the chairs, standing in the back, even spilling into the hallway. The room buzzed with quiet conversations, nervous energy, and anticipation. The mayor stepped up to the podium. He looked out at the crowd, faces full of pain, anger, and hope. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "This tragedy has affected us deeply. We mourn for Mia and for every family that lives in fear. Tonight, we must talk openly about the problems we face. We must listen to each other." Several community leaders took the stage after him, each sharing stories of their own experiences with police and race. The room grew quiet as people spoke honestly about fear, pain, and hope for change. Jasmine stood in the audience, her heart pounding. When it was her turn, she stepped up and spoke clearly. "Mia was my friend," she said. "She was kind, smart, and full of dreams. What happened to her should never happen to anyone. We need to change how the police work, how they see us, and how they treat us." Her words were met with applause, but also some murmurs of disagreement. After the meeting, a group of young people gathered outside the town hall. They talked about plans for peaceful protests and community events to raise awareness. Officer Reed stood at a distance, watching quietly. He wanted to join but felt unsure. He didn't want to cause more anger, but he knew he had to be part of the solution. Later that week, Reed reached out to Mr. Carter at the community center. They met to talk about what Reed could do to rebuild trust. Mr. Carter listened carefully. "The first step is listening," he said. "You have to understand the community's pain before you can help heal it." Reed nodded. He promised to attend community meetings, join training on bias, and volunteer to help in ways that showed he was serious about change. At the hospital, Mia's condition was slowly improving. She had opened her eyes and could speak in short sentences. Her family was grateful for every small sign of progress. Mia's recovery became a symbol of hope for many in the town. People brought cards, flowers, and gifts to the hospital. They prayed for her and for the town's future. Despite the growing support, some people remained angry. Some said that no apology or change could fix what had been done. Tensions sometimes rose during protests, and the police struggled to keep order without making things worse. Mayor Johnson worked hard to balance justice and peace. He met with police leaders, community groups, and city officials to find solutions. One afternoon, he sat with Officer Reed in his office. The conversation was difficult, but honest. "You made a terrible mistake," the mayor said. "But now you have to show you can change. Our community needs to believe in you again." Reed looked down. "I understand. I want to do better. I'm ready to learn and listen." The mayor nodded. "Good. That is a start." The days passed, and Willow Creek began to change. More people joined the discussions about race and policing. Schools held workshops. The police department started new training programs. Community groups worked together for peace and justice. Jasmine helped organize a youth event where young people shared their stories and dreams. She spoke about Mia, reminding everyone why change mattered. Officer Reed volunteered to help at the event, working quietly behind the scenes. It was his way of giving back, of showing he cared. As the town faced its pain and fear, a new feeling grew, a hope that together they could build a better future. The hospital room was quiet but filled with hope. Mia lay in bed, her eyes slowly opening and closing. The doctor said she was healing well, but the road ahead was long. Her family stayed close, taking turns to sit by her side, speaking softly and praying for strength. Mayor Johnson spent hours at the hospital, holding his daughter's hand and telling her stories of better days ahead. Mrs. Johnson never left Mia's side, wiping away tears and whispering words of comfort. Outside the Bow Hospital, the town was slowly beginning to breathe again. The shock of the shooting had turned into action, conversations, and plans for change. People started to believe that healing was possible. At the same time, the police department was facing a new reality. Chief Davis called a meeting with all officers. The mood was serious. He spoke about accountability, trust, and the need for change. "We have lost the community's trust," he said. "It's up to us to earn it back, one step at a time." Officer Reed sat quietly among his fellow officers. He knew that earning back trust would not be easy. Every day he thought about Mia and the mistake he had made, but he was determined to do what he could. In the days that followed, the town organized a series of community dialogues. These meetings brought together police officers, residents, and local leaders to talk openly. At first, many conversations were tense. Old wounds were exposed and feelings ran high. Jasmine attended every meeting. She spoke about Mia's dreams, the pain her family was feeling, and the hope that justice would bring real change. One evening at a dialogue meeting, Officer Reed stood up. His voice was shaky but honest. "I know I hurt your community," he said. "I am sorry for what happened to Mia. I want to learn and be better. I want to work with you, not against you." The room was silent for a moment, then people nodded slowly. It was not forgiveness, but a start. The mayor and his wife also joined some of the meetings. They shared their story, not just as leaders, but as a family hoping for healing. At the same time, Mia's recovery became stronger. She was able to sit up, talk more, and smile. Each small victory was a light for her family and the town. One afternoon, Mia asked her mother about the town meeting she heard about. "Mom, when can I go home?" she asked quietly. Mrs. Johnson smiled gently. "Soon, Mia. And when you do, you'll see that people are working hard to make things better." Mia nodded, her eyes bright despite the pain. Back at the police station, Officer Reed began attending special training sessions about bias, communication, and community care. He met with counselors who helped him understand his fears and reactions. He also started volunteering at the community center, helping with youth programs and events. It was a way to show he wanted to be part of the healing. At one event, Reed helped organize a basketball game for local kids. Jasmine and some of Mia's friends were there playing and laughing. Reed watched from the sidelines, feeling a small sense of hope. "Thank you for helping," Jasmine said as she walked by. Reed nodded, grateful for the chance. Meanwhile, the city council worked on new policies to improve policing. They planned better training, stronger rules against misconduct, and programs to build trust. Mayor Johnson was involved every step of the way. He knew the work was difficult, but necessary. One afternoon, the mayor visited the police department. He spoke with officers, including Reed. "We are not enemies," he said. "We must be partners in building a safe, just community." Reed felt the weight of those words, but also their promise. As the weeks passed, Willow Creek began to change. The protests slowed but did not stop. People continued to speak up and work for justice. The town's wounds were still healing, but the hope for a better future grew stronger. At Mia's home, the family prepared for her return. They cleaned her room, filled it with flowers, and planned a small welcome-back celebration. When the day finally came, neighbors gathered outside, cheering and waving signs. Mia smiled weakly from the car, surrounded by her family. Mayor Johnson looked at his daughter, then at the crowd. "This is not just a return home," he said. "It is a step toward healing and hope for all of us." Mia's journey was far from over, but she was no longer alone. The town stood with her, ready to face the future together. The days after Mia's return home were filled with quiet moments of joy and careful healing. Her family surrounded her with love, helping her with small tasks and encouraging her to rest. Though Mia's body was still weak, her spirit began to grow stronger. Mayor Johnson spent many hours by her side, determined to protect his daughter and guide her toward recovery. Yet, even in this quiet peace, his mind was busy with the larger battle ahead, the fight for justice and true change in Willow Creek. The investigation into the shooting was still ongoing. Police officials, city leaders, and independent investigators reviewed every detail. Officer Reed's actions were being examined carefully. The community demanded answers, transparency, and accountability. One morning, the mayor received a call from the police chief. He asked to meet with him privately. In the chief's office, the two men sat facing each other, a mixture of tension and hope in the air. "We want to handle this fairly and openly," Chief Davis said. "Reed is being suspended pending the investigation. We're also looking at ways to improve training and communication." Mayor Johnson nodded. "That's a start, but the community needs more than promises. They need real change and justice." The chief sighed. "We understand. It will take time." Outside, the town's streets were calm but ready. Community leaders and activists planned a large, peaceful rally. They wanted to show support for Mia and demand reforms in the police department. Jasmine worked closely with other young leaders to organize the event. Flyers were distributed, social media posts made, and volunteers gathered. The hope was to bring everyone together, not just to mourn, but to push for change. The day of the rally arrived, and the town square filled with people. There were families, students, teachers, workers, and police officers. The air was heavy, with emotion, but also filled with determination. Mayor Johnson took the stage first. His voice was strong and steady. "We stand here today not only for Mia, but for every person in Willow Creek who deserves to feel safe and respected. This moment calls for change, a change in how we listen, how we protect, and how we heal." "First," crowd cheered, waving signs and chanting. Jasmine stepped up next. She spoke about friendship, hope, and the need for justice. "We cannot forget what happened to Mia. But we also must not lose faith. Together, we can build a community where every child walks without fear." Officer Reed watched from the side of the crowd, his heart heavy but hopeful. He had volunteered to help with security for the event and to show his commitment to change. After the speeches, people marched peacefully through the streets, chanting for justice and reform. Police officers and community members walked side by side. The rally ended with a moment of silence for Mia and all those who had suffered from injustice. The event made headlines across the region. It was a clear message. Willow Creek would no longer accept fear and violence. The town wanted healing and fairness. Back at the city hall, the mayor and city council held a special meeting. They announced new policies designed to improve policing. There would be regular community oversight of the police department, better training on racial bias, and stronger consequences for officers who broke the law. Mayor Johnson spoke passionately. "We will not forget this pain. We will use it to build a better future for all." Officer Reed was officially suspended but allowed to attend special training and community programs. It was a chance for him to learn and prove he could change. He worked hard to earn trust back. He volunteered at schools, helped organize community events, and met regularly with counselors and trainers. In one of their sessions, Reed spoke honestly. "I want to be better, but I know that words are not enough. I need to show through actions." His counselor nodded. "Change is a process. Keep moving forward." Mia's recovery continued. She slowly regained strength and began speaking more freely about her dreams and hopes for the future. One afternoon, as she practiced walking with the help of a physical therapist, her mother smiled warmly. "You're getting stronger every day," Mrs. Johnson said. Mia looked up, her eyes shining. "I want to help people. I want to make sure no one else gets hurt like me." Her words touched everyone around her. The town's healing was a slow journey. Not everyone agreed on how fast or far things should go. Some residents still felt fear and anger. Others struggled to trust the police again. But step by step, Willow Creek was moving forward. Officer Reed attended one of the community meetings again. This time, he spoke about what he had learned. "I know I hurt the community and betrayed your trust. I'm sorry. I'm working to be a better officer and a better person." The room was quiet. Then some people nodded. Others applauded softly. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Mayor Johnson watched from the back, proud of the courage shown by both the community and Reed. He knew the road ahead would still be hard, but he believed that through honesty, pain, and hope, Willow Creek could change. One evening, as the sun set over the town, Mia sat on her porch with her parents. The air was warm, and the sky painted with soft colors. "I want to go back to school, soon," she said. Her father smiled gently. "You will. We'll make sure you're ready." Mia looked up at the stars. "I want to be someone who helps others, someone who makes a difference." Mrs. Johnson held her hand. "You already are, Mia." The family sat together in peaceful silence, ready to face the future, together. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains of the Johnson family home. Birds chirped outside, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. For the first time in many weeks, the house felt lighter, a feeling of hope beginning to bloom alongside the healing wounds. Mia sat at the kitchen table, a gentle smile playing on her lips. Her once fragile body had grown stronger, and her spirit was shining bright. She was ready to face the world again, to step back into her life with courage and hope. Her parents watched her carefully, proud and cautious. They knew the journey was far from over, but they were ready to support Mia every step of the way. That day marked a special moment. The first day Mia would return to school. Mayor Johnson walked with her to Willow Creek High School. The streets were calm but lined with familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and community members who had followed Mia's journey and wanted to show their support. Teachers and students greeted Mia warmly as she entered the school. Her classmates had held meetings and prepared welcome signs and messages of encouragement. The halls echoed with kind words and hopeful smiles. In the classroom, Mia took her seat, surrounded by friends who cared deeply for her. She listened carefully to her teacher, absorbing the lessons, but also feeling the strength of her community behind her. At the same time, the police department was continuing its work. Officer Reed had completed his training and community service. He returned to duty with a clear purpose, to serve with respect, humility, and fairness. The department had made changes: better communication with the public, stronger rules against bias, and a new focus on community care. Officer Reed knew trust could not be given quickly. It had to be earned. One afternoon, he met with Mayor Johnson in his office. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," Reed said. "I promise to do everything I can to rebuild trust and keep our town safe." The mayor nodded. "It's a long road, Reed, but today we take one more step forward." In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek began to truly heal. The community worked together to create programs for youth, to build bridges between police and residents, and to support families affected by violence and fear. Jasmine, Mia's friend, became a leader in these efforts. She organized events and spoke openly about hope and change. Mia herself grew stronger every day. She found joy in small things: a walk in the park, a conversation with a friend, a moment of quiet reflection. One evening, Mia and her family attended a town event celebrating progress. People from all backgrounds came together, sharing stories, music, and laughter. Mayor Johnson stepped to the microphone. "We have faced pain and fear, but we have also found hope and strength. This town is healing because we are united." The crowd cheered. Mia looked around, feeling the warmth of her community. She thought about the journey, the pain, the struggles, and the courage it took to face it all. She whispered softly, "This is just the beginning." Officer Reed stood nearby, watching the crowd. He saw the faces of people he had hurt, but also those willing to forgive and move forward. He felt a deep sense of responsibility. Later, as the event ended and the crowd began to leave, Reed approached Mia's father. "Mayor, I want you to know I am committed to change. For Mia. For this town." Mayor Johnson looked at him and nodded. "Actions speak louder than words, Reed. Keep working." The night air was cool as Mia's family walked home. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. Inside, Mia sat, by the window, thinking about the future. She knew challenges would come, but she was no longer afraid. She had the love of her family, the strength of her community, and her own courage. And that was enough. Epilogue. Months passed, and Willow Creek grew stronger. The town became an example of how pain could lead to progress, and fear could turn into hope. Mia returned to her daily life, school, friends, and dreams of helping others. She began volunteering at the community center, sharing her story and inspiring others. Officer Reed continued his work with renewed purpose. He mentored young officers, spoke at community events, and listened more than he talked. Mayor Johnson worked tirelessly, always remembering the lesson of his daughter's story, that justice and healing must go hand in hand. Willow Creek was far from perfect, but it was moving forward, together, and in the hearts of its people a new dawn was rising.